Hello, you're watching our last episode of Undercurrent. I'm your host, Lucy Marchant. The Harry Hunter Rehabilitation Centre choir group are in the middle of rehearsals in preparation for the Sing for Health concert on the 20th of May. The group allows recovering addicts to come together and experience joy and healing by singing together. Angela McDonald reports.
This is the Harry Hunter Centre, and it's called part of the Bridge program with the Salvation Army. And it's a 13-week program, and it's with people battling addiction.
Because in addiction, especially active addiction, you get caged. You know, you're really looking down the ground.
Well, I was actually a resident in the rehab about 5 years ago, and I started a little group then, and it went really well. It made us all feel good. And now 5 years later, I'm back at the rehab starting a choir there.
6, 7, there's a dark and a troubled side of life.
To see all their happy faces and people start coming alive and coming out of their shell.
Have people loosen up too as we go on.
Lean on me, when you're strong, I'll be your friend.
This time around, I told myself, I'm 45 years old, and addiction. I don't really want to be going on with this. It's not a nice way to live. And asked me 8 weeks ago if I'd be singing a choir, and be like, no way in the world.
And I find it's really, we might sing for an hour and you just forget everything else. You leave your troubles at the door, and you go, and everything else just goes away, and we're just singing together. Yeah.
Well, I'll graduate in 2 weeks, and I've been here for three months, so I'm going really good. It just makes you happy every day, and I love music in general, so yeah.
Ready, and you can sing, and I can sing, so let's all sing together.
I told myself, that hey, I want to nail this thing. So it's not just about the classes and that; it's about learning to get out of your comfort zone and trying new things and things like that. So
we can sing forever. Lift your voice.
I always feel really good. I drive home going, it's so good. I'm so glad to be alive. That was really fun.
Share a simple melody in some nasty weather. Lift your voice and pass the song along.
I'm Angela McDonald for Undercurrent.
Let's Talk Culture. It's a series of seminars which aims to assist mental health workers and service providers to work in a culturally responsive way. The 22nd seminar in a series focuses on the issues related to general practice, culture and mental health. Harpreet with the report.
We are here today for the 22nd seminar in the Let's Talk Culture series. The series, which is running in its 8th year, focuses on general practice, mental health and culture, and will discuss the problems encountered between a GP when they consult their patients. Here's the distinguished guest, Dr. Barry Fetovich, who will share his views.
I have born in WA with a Croatian family background.
Okay, and what do you do?
I'm a general practitioner. I work in the Lockridge Medical Centre, which is sort of east of the city, in a relatively not so well-off area and quite ethnically diverse.
Okay, and how long have you been working as a GP?
I've been working as a GP I've been in the practice for 37 years.
Okay, that's a long time. And tell us how your background affects your practice.
First off, I speak Croatian, and that means I can communicate with people from the former Yugoslavia. So it means I don't have to use an interpreter, which makes life easier. And because of I grew up in an environment learning about like when I was a child, my parents and grandparents used to talk about the difficulties of being new to the country. I have a sensitivity towards people who come here from elsewhere.
How does that help for the patient when the doctor understands that?
I hope that it means I can have a better relationship with the patient, that people can be more open and tell me about what's going on, and the better I get information about what's happening and the more comprehensive that information, then it helps in my clinical decision making.
And is knowing their feelings and their culture and their background a big part of history taking?
Well, it's an important part of it because it's one thing to know what the problem is, but if people feel that you've heard what their concerns are, they're more likely to then follow through with the treatment, especially if you're recommending something that they might feel uncomfortable with or feels funny in some way.
Okay, and today you're here at the Department of Health for the Let's Talk Culture series. Tell us about that.
I got invited to talk about my experience of working with people from a different background, and I thought that it would be a worthwhile thing. I think that our understanding that we're all cultural beings, that we all have different backgrounds, is an important part of medical care.
And would you be able to share with us experience with patient or anything that stands out for you?
I think people can, sometimes people have a partial understanding of English, and so what happens is that I had one patient once who had a gallbladder problem, and he rang the receptionist to book an appointment with a surgeon, and the receptionist said, "Well, what's the problem?" And he said, "I have a bladder problem." And she says, "Oh no, we don't deal with that." And then he came to see me to tell me that I'd referred him to the wrong specialist. And then as I listened to the story, I realised that in Croatian and in English, there are two different words for bladder and gallbladder, but in English, in a sense, it's the same word, bladder. And so I had to explain to him that gallbladder, that he'd been sent to the right person, but that they had misunderstood him. So a simple example of how, even just with a little bit of knowledge, people can actually still make mistakes. I think that although Australia is a multicultural country, that even within the Australian community there are different cultural strands as well, and that doctors and health professionals being able to understand those different perspectives is helpful.
Okay, and what if a doctor doesn't understand or doesn't have a cultural background like you? So what happens then?
Well, I think it's that comes up to the issue of learning how to use an interpreter. And I think recognising that you need to understand a bit more about this person than simply their symptoms.
Australia is becoming increasingly multicultural, and for GPs to effectively connect with their patients, they would have to understand the cultural differences and the linguistic divide. Harpreet Kaur reporting for Undercurrent.
The City of Perth has started to introduce female-only parking bays in the CBD car park. What do the people of Perth think about it? Our Undercurrent reporter Detchen went to find out.
The Bay Street car park in Perth CBD now has women-friendly parking bays. The mega car park has a total of some 700 parking bays, but of that 28 have been designated as women-friendly. It is a trial initiative of the City of Perth. The trial began last week and runs for 3 months. It is aimed at finding out whether there is a demand for such parking spaces. I spoke to several people to find out what people think about it.
Female friendly, I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad idea.
I think it's pretty good. It's safe for everyone.
I don't think so. I think it's a waste of time.
I don't think we have that in Melbourne, but I think it's cool. I don't see any issue with it. Why not treat women special? I mean, it's only a few extra spots.
I don't know. I think it's a bit sexist, really. Yeah. At the end of the day, parking bay is a parking bay. Shouldn't matter who parks in it.
Do you think this will ensure safety for women?
It would help, yeah.
I don't think anything's going to save the problems. They'll always exist, but I think it'll help a little.
I don't know. how it's actually going to make it safer for women, because people can still enter there, and I'm not sure whether they would gravitate towards the female areas, knowing that there are only going to be females there and nobody else to help. So I'm not sure if it's a great idea.
There's a lot of things you can do to make car parks safe, but by trying out a new thing, whereas you want to isolate a few car parks, just to kind of see what happens, I don't think it's a bad idea.
But some people say that it's not just the women who are vulnerable. We have other groups such as the elderly who are also vulnerable. So why just create safety parking for women?
They do have a point about the elderly.
Obviously, somebody's been banging a drum, but, I don't think they need women-only parking bays. That's silly, really.
I think it's a necessary thing today because there's too much violence and it's not just aimed at women, I know, but I think it's a good thing for women because naturally they don't have the muscles that men have and the strength.
Some people have been saying, it's actually kind of propagates the idea that women is a weaker sex. Do you agree?
What, and not as good a drivers as men? No, that's not true, is it?
I don't think it implies bad driving, but, obviously women are more vulnerable, so I can understand where they're coming from with the female-friendly parking, yeah.
I don't think it makes them seem like a lesser sex, a weaker sex. I just think it's just trying to help, just trying to add safety around, just add safety around women.
Will you use it?
The female-friendly? I would.
Yeah, give it a go, see if it works.
If I had a choice, no. If that was the only parking bay, then sure.
I think so. I think a lot of women will.
This is Tisha Nongmo reporting for Undercurrent.
Stay with us on West TV. We'll be back for more Undercurrent after a short break. Welcome back. You're watching Undercurrent. Think transport in 2030. Will the state cope with congestion? What will be the global trends in transport? Think about electric vehicles, autonomous cars, innovation in public transport. What impact will these have on Western Australia in the coming 15 years? Angela McDonald reports.
What will be the state of transport for Western Australia in 2030? Transport. This is the latest summit topic for Innovate Australia. Electric vehicles, autonomous cars, global trends and public transport. All here in open dialogue at the WA State of Innovation Summit on Transport.
This latest summit on transport is about promoting the idea of innovation in transport. So looking at what are the latest ideas that are developed here in Western Australia and more generally in Australia that we can apply and we can see and give the opportunity to people to mingle and talk about that together so that there are more ideas developed and more opportunities taken. The safety on the roads, we have also issues about what about the the increasing population that we have in the state and how we're going to solve this issue and look at it from a holistic point of view. What are the solutions that are available and how we can address them.
How did this innovation of autonomous vehicles first come about?
Look, it's been a bit of a journey. Basically, people want this, and then the car companies, the technology companies really have been responding to that. We see these sorts of change happen not very often, and so we're at this unique point in time where the manufacturers have built their technology and can now make it available, and we're going to see some real big changes to our way we live our lives. Just think of all the time you will have available to you now when you're in the car, when you don't actually have to drive it. You could be doing all sorts of things, even talking to your friends.
And is it up to the private sector to convince the governments?
No, I think this is really a partnership. I think the government, in most places around the world, see the benefits of this and they need to respond to that and they need to work in partnership with industry to make it happen. And the Australian Driverless Vehicle Initiative, who I represent, are really there to really encourage that to happen, to work with all the parties. And there's been a lot of goodwill to make this happen. And we'd really like to see something happen in WA. The RAC trial of autonomous buses, which is coming up very shortly, which our initiative is involved with, will be the first, I think, example of that on a public road in Western Australia.
Skycar is a personal rapid transit, and they're developing those all over the world now, particularly for cities, because cities are just becoming congested. And Skycar is 5 metres above the street level. So basically, we use that right of way that's not being used at the moment, and we go right over the top of the traffic, point to point, 50 k's. We can cater for anywhere because you're not using up much land space. As on the video, you're just putting the poles in and connecting it up. So it becomes a very flexible system, very light. We're also looking at possible aluminium or steel for different levels.
You'll have to hire people to monitor them and safety, keep checks on everything?
Yes, it's a good industry for Perth. There's a control system. You've got maintenance people, you've got station people. It's a very, very, very economic for Perth.
And is it an expensive project to do Skycars?
It's cheaper than light rail. Light rail's 5 times more expensive, so it works out 12 million a kilometre.
So what I'm going to talk about is how cities can be more innovative in the way they attract finance to get urban rail built, because I've had the last 30 years doing that, but it's all been government based. Now I'm trying to suggest there are new ways of doing it with the private sector. There's a great deal of interest in this approach because governments, as you know, don't have any money, so they don't know how to get these projects built. And that's because we've tended to look at urban rail as a welfare project, and governments are needed to do welfare. But they're not now. They're very popular. They are transforming cities. There's a market for them. And the private sector like them because they unleash urban development around the stations. So if you can put that into practice and use that to help build the railway, then everybody gains. The community gains, they get their railway, they get their centre, they get much better service, and the developer gets his project up and he's able to make money out of the urban development. Government gets their train. So everybody gains, but it's a matter of trialling it out and seeing how that can be done.
I'm Angela McDonald for Undercurrent.
Slippages is a solo exhibition of work by Lydia Treffaway. The work, inspired by everyday car travel in Perth, delves into the suburban sprawl of the city. Our Undercurrent reporter Detchen went to check it out.
Lydia Treffaway is the recipient of the City of South Perth's Emerging Artist Young Artist Award. Her works has also earned her several other awards from Curtin University, where she's currently doing her PhD in Fine Arts.
Well, I was looking at the slippages in between different states, like Daydream. So the exhibition is about car travel, and when you're traveling in the car and you might be daydreaming, and there's a sort of slippage as you go through the landscape of between known and unknown spaces. And also a slippage in the method used. So there's this sort of use of solvents to create spaces which aren't necessarily depictive. They sort of slide between visible and invisible space. So I was sort of working with that.
How would you describe, these new works of yours, and how do they relate to your previous works?
Well, I've always been interested in travel as a theme, train travel, car travel, plane travel, and sort of how you experience those different kinds of everyday, ordinary travel. So I've looked in the past at maps and using photography as a note-taking device to record the landscape you move through. And yeah, these works just came out of kind of extending that into maybe different plateaus of consciousness. So the traveller who is inscribed by the landscape as they pass through it. So they become what I'd call undisclosed images. They're not readily available, but you can sort of pick out certain details.
I've read that you grew up in the hills. And how did that influence your work? What role does that play in your works?
Well, most of my works focus on suburban landscapes in the flat metropolitan parts of Perth, and I think in a way I had a fascination for those landscapes because growing up in the hills, the sort of mundane aspects of the landscape like bus stops and pavements and street signs are almost offset by the beauty of the natural bush. And so I had this fascination with aspects of landscape which are almost, in a sense, can be considered ugly, but I just found them interesting, and it was almost as if when I came down from the hills, I was like a tourist.
Is there any particular message or messages that your work tries to convey?
I'm not trying to convey a specific message, but I'm sort of trying to open up and explore spaces of everyday travel, and particularly car travel, in a way that doesn't focus on sort of masculine kind of car culture or on ecological disasters or car crashes, but is more about everyday travel and returning to a space where we can contemplate how we move through suburban and urban landscapes.
This is the last day of the exhibition. If you could tell us, how has the public response been to your works?
I found it had a great response, people coming in off the street, and we've had a steady flow of people in over the course of the exhibition. And I've heard a lot of positive responses to the work, which has been nice.
Is there like any particular favorite of yours from these works?
I think in some senses the works have to be seen together, so when you take one work out it's a bit hard, but I do think this was a particularly successful work. I'm fascinated by the palm tree as an element of suburban landscape, so this one might be my favorite.
This is Tisha Nongmur reporting for Undercurrent.
The Landcare Group is a non-profit organisation that coordinates river restoration, bushland management and community action. Volunteers work together to clean bushland in Mount Missouri, south of Perth. Laura Bayumi with the report.
Armadale Gosnell's Landcare is a not-for-profit group which works with volunteers, biodiversity and natural resources. Today we are at Mount Nesura in South Perth. Volunteers are cleaning bushland to maintain a healthy environment. Today you manage a work day to clean the bush and you are supported by volunteers. What are your two main goals?
Two main goals is to conduct, I suppose, environmental restoration work with volunteers, so getting them involved in practical work, and I suppose our other main goal is about educating the community, both locally and wider community, about environmental environmental issues, land care issues, so that I guess that raise awareness of some of those issues and how people can act to help, I guess, look after our natural environment.
And who are people who participate to your work day? And how did they know about your initiative?
We get school groups involved. So I think last year we had over 2,000 school kids helping us from over 20 odd different schools locally. And we also get corporate groups. We also support a lot of, there are smaller community groups that might have a particular area that they really try and look after. And then we also just get people from the general public who might rock up on one of our, say, a weekend work days where we might be doing planting in a certain spot, National Tree Day or something like that, getting involved with one of those sorts of days, and they just want to come down. I think a lot of people probably on social media now, so we've got a Facebook page, we use that. And also we have a mailing list of email contacts, so we use that as well.
That work day is one among others, so why is it important to get people involved in the protection of the land care?
Well, I think it's really important that people within our general community, that we all take responsibility for the natural areas around us, because these places, I guess, they face a lot of threats, particularly in urban areas, from, I guess, the way we live our lives. So, you know, we need to take responsibility for that and get involved with looking after our environment, our natural environments, the rivers and all those sorts of places. Yeah.
And in your mind, are people aware enough?
I think some people are really, really aware, and I've noticed, particularly like the students from various schools and that, I think nowadays the education's really coming through the school systems, and it's really good. So you know, a lot of the that get involved, they are quite aware, and even adults, there are a lot of really aware adults. But I'd also say there's probably quite a lot of people that aren't as aware as maybe they could be, or as I would personally like them to be. So yeah, I think definitely we've got a lot of work to do with raising awareness in the wider community. Yep.
And Perth is one of the most biodiverse cities in the world. So over 1,500 plant species are found here. So what is the biggest danger for nature here?
In an urban area such as Perth, there's a wide variety of threats, I suppose, coming from the way we live our lives. So, you know, whether that's pollution coming from roads, so oils and stuff like that are coming out of cars and getting on the road and then washing through drains. There's also, you know, higher loads of fertilisers and other nutrient sources coming from people's lawns or agricultural sort of areas, or even I mean, there's a range of ways nutrients can get into the river and places like that, or even bushlands. So that's probably one of the big things that we sort of tackle is nutrients getting into the waterways. That's the biggest threat, I think, for waterways. But I mean, there's a whole range of other issues, from land clearing, introduction of I suppose exotic plant and animal species that may adversely affect some of our native species, and that can cause extinction or even localised extinction of species in certain areas. And I guess now we're sort of facing increasingly the threat of climate change, which people are more and more aware of, and that's having a lot of effects on our bushlands and our other natural environments, as well as the species that live in those areas.
This is Laura Bayumi for Undercurrent.
Thank you for watching Undercurrent. Take care, and we'll see you in a few weeks for our next season.